All right, good afternoon, Grunts. Welcome to another live special talk today. Let's go ahead and bring them on. Jay, how you doing, man?
Good. How are you doing, Randall?
All right, so we've got Jason or Jay from the Professional Citizen Project, and let's just go ahead and show it off. Very cool series of books coming out that you guys need to check out. So this is the Citizen Manual number 9, Adverse Conditions and Environments. Or would you call this ACE, a ACE manual? Would you shorten it like that?
Yeah, absolutely. ACE for Adverse Conditions and Environments. You got it.
All right, cool. So before we get to that, I'm going back to a very old thing I used to do. We're going to read off some comments. I got a list of hater comments. So you can join in on the fun. We'll open up with some bullshit. All right. Last time I tried to bring this back last time and I got kicked off for doing the wrong things live.
Oh boy.
You look like a guy that celebrated, then signed up as soon as you heard about Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Bad channel, blocked and reported for misinformation. So I guess his reporting and blocking didn't work.
I guess not, right? When you're catching flack, doesn't that mean you're over the target?
I guess so, man. I got enough of them. Getting advice on tactical wear from a guy standing in the snow-covered mountains wearing top and bottom denim apparel was not the unintentionally hilarious video I expected to find today. But then it got better. Throw away your radio. Blow your rape whistle.
I remember reading that one.
Yeah, let's see. A couple more. Are you poor or something? Yes, we're all poor. That's why we're here.
That's right.
If you want to see the, there's plenty of Gucci channels if you guys want to watch that shit. All right, let's see. One more. Let's get a good one. I know you got plenty too. We talked shit about this in the group.
Right.
So this is on a survival video. A real man doesn't need all that stuff. Why do you need a compass in your own backyard? Do you not know your directions? Why do you need all of that signaling equipment when you're possessive, going to walk yourself out? Why would you carry all the so-called survival stuff when you're possessive, going around your own area? That doesn't make sense. So this is one of the guys that goes for a hike, and we end up finding his body a couple days later.
Right, because he thought he was too good for the basic essentials, regardless of how far away you're going from your house or the trailhead or wherever. That's just piss poor planning.
Yeah, and this is on the latest kind of drunken rant I did, where I basically had a chest pack on me. So he's talking about carrying a whole bunch of stuff. Like, he should see how a lot of us roll around just going out to check our mail.
Right.
So with the preparedness, that's a good segue. Tell us a little bit about this Professional Citizen Project and how you got into it.
So the whole idea behind the Professional Citizen Project was really to take, so you have manuals, you have your military field manuals, you have your outdoor manuals, you have your survivor manuals, but when you're just a regular citizen with no background in any of it, the way that they're written, they're very hard to decipher. They're hard to understand for the normal everyday Joe who is just wanting to get into it. So for guys, especially lately, who are really wanting to dive into this topic, to this whole lifestyle, it really, they read this stuff and they think, oh, this is way over my head. I'm never going to do this. So it kind of pushes them away from it. So to be able to put together a series of manuals that are written for everyday people from the ground up, we thought was really important. And there's a whole, you see this reoccurring theme in all of the books, this crawl, walk, run. Like this is, like even from writing this is that crawl phase. Like these are those basics that everyone seems, I don't know if people feel, in our genre, people feel as though they're too good to talk about it, or it's beneath them to go into detail about it. But it's super important because it builds that knowledge, it builds that foundation for everything else. I mean, I don't care if you're a former SOF cool dude, or you're a former mountaineer, or you're just a scout leader, or whatever it may be. It doesn't matter. But this is, everybody started somewhere, and I felt it was important to start here, for laying that foundational information for survival in the outdoors.
Yeah, so real quick, hold yours up again. So this is a professional and a dumb grunt. So I got my tabbies in there. And I wasn't even cool enough to get like infantry blue or something. I got freaking pink, the closest freaking color I could find. So you just know your book that well. But I'm like, all right, yeah, tabbies go. So
there's nothing wrong with that.
All right, well, we'll get into your story, but okay, so I like the line of thinking, and I preach that all the time. Basics. You can work on what we call basics. People think that's derogatory, and you could become a badass, and you just keep doing that over and over. And
absolutely.
Okay, so if you're going in that direction, what got you connected with these guys, the Professional Citizen Project?
So it was, they were starting the first book, the CM1, and it really, we kind of connected through the YouTube page, and after a couple of phone calls and emails, Jack Morris made me an offer for writing this specific one. He was like, Jay, I really think this would be right up your alley. This is what I would like to offer to you. Would you be interested? So I've never written anything in my life. I mean, I almost didn't graduate high school because I was failing English class. I am not a writer whatsoever. So for me to take on something like this was a pretty big deal. And several years ago, my wife had said to me, when I was getting out of the outdoor industry, all my climbing and mountaineering and skiing and everything, my wife had said to me, she was like, Jay, you should write a book about all of your experiences that's to help others who are wanting to get outdoors and do these things. She's like, you have a story to tell, you should do it. And I never did. And this was really Jack Morris reaching out to me from the Professional Citizen Project was really that catalyst that here's somebody else that also thinks that. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take a leap of faith. I prayed on it. We talked about it, and I'm like, I'm going for it. So 6 months later, this was the finished project.
6 months for your book.
Yeah. Yep. Wow, yeah. Man. From start to finish, it was 6 months.
That's that's pretty fast, man, for a quote non-writer.
It was. I had an idea on how I wanted to break it down, and I just started writing. I just started jotting notes during the day. Then I'd type it out in the evenings or early in the mornings, and then I'd edit it, and then I'd go back and start on the next one. And before you knew it, about 5 months in, I had the finished product. But then it was all of the process of editing and putting pictures into it and all of that good stuff. So that took a little while too. So yeah, not only did I have to write it, but I was my own editor at the same time. So that was interesting as well.
Yeah, and you guys can see they got a pretty decent library on their website. So the website will be down in the description after this. If you want to go check them out, I highly recommend you do.
So I'm happy with it. I'm proud of it. I think it's a good start from my perspective of now that this is out there, now it can be built upon. After that you can get into the walking phase and the running phase of being able to explore some of the topics in much more detail.
Yeah, I like that, man. And in the grunt world, we have a very similar approach. You will become an expert at many things, but it's still mostly just rehashing basics, like
very true.
You won't see people talking about basics on all these big cool guy channels because it's like you said, it's beneath them. But if you don't have I'm still going to get some of the other books, but just reading through yours, if you don't have some of these basic skills down, you're not going to make it to the fight to begin with.
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
and I like
Very true.
how, I mean, it's laid out. Like, so have you actually, you must have gone through a bunch of our field manuals and stuff, right?
I did. Yes. I went through, in fact, let me see here, because there were some specific ones that really helped me out. The U.S. Army Jungle Operations, the Infantry Unit Mountain Operations Manual, the SEER Student Handbook for the Navy and Marine Corps, and the which was one other one, the Mountain Warfare and Cold Weather Operations. Those were great references for me, and those were important for me because I don't come from a military background. I come from the outdoor industry. I come from a mountaineering, climbing, backpacking background, and so to be able to take what I know through 3 decades of experience, I wanted to educate myself more on it from the military perspective on it as well, so that writing this, I could really kind of enter, and I don't want to say entertain, but I could reach both audiences and feel good about it, that I was sharing relevant information that both sides could grasp and run with.
Yeah, this reminds me of kind of like a FM combined with what we call a GTA, a graphic training aid. So basically, okay. I think the Army figured out soldiers weren't reading entire field manuals anymore, so they would just print up like what we call smart cards, and then they would start putting those together in little, kind of like a quad fold type thing that you could fold up and put in your pocket. And it's like, I still got a bunch of them, but you got like your cold weather operations, nice and folded up. It's laminated, mm-hmm. So you pull it out in the field and you can just, when you're bored, read through some things and kind of rehash them. But this kind of reminds me of that, like an FM combined with that. And
okay,
I say that because all the way in the back, you've got some of your formats. Oh, I found this in the back too. So he's got like a kind of a radio programming chart. So if you just don't know where to start with programming your radios in Chirp, you could just steal his. It's right, got and all your GMRS, your VHFs, all that. You just plug them in there.
And that is straight from, what's the name of the website? It's not Radio Reference. It's one of the radio reference file websites with like Patriot Radio and all that stuff in it. Like that, when I first got involved in radios, that was like my go-to. Like the first time I started programming radios, that was right what I went off of. And then I just customized it for my own area. And that was a huge help to me, starting from ground zero with it. So, I mean, putting it in here, I felt, I'm like, you know what, if it helped me starting off, it can sure as heck help out others.
Yeah, and that's a good deal because, especially with this radio stuff, like some guys just want to be told what to do. So I've seen some of the popular channels like Not a Rubicon, and he'll actually come out and say, all right, you guys wanted a freaking off-road wilderness survival channel. Okay, fuck it. It's 16. 4x4, 4x4. It's 16. There you go. And so, so you got a lot of people that know about radios and read all this stuff, but they're like, what should I actually have in my radio? You know, the Baofeng holds, 150 something slots. I got one of these DMRs that holds like 4,000 or something. What do you put in there? Okay, well, if you don't know, check out his book and go just put all those in there. And that's your start. Because most people are going to have all of those VHF channels and like all the GMRS. Most people are going to have those. So start scanning those. You got 100 something, freaks or channels to scan, and you're hanging out with people. And then, but this is what I was thinking of. So you got like a sit rep and a salute report in here. I don't know if you guys can see that, but that's good stuff, and we call them, we call them dummy cards, but we would tape stuff like this to the windows in our trucks, and especially like 9-line medevac, stuff like that. Like nobody remembers all that stuff verbatim. So we would take copies of that and bring us with us. So you fill it in as you're dealing with it. So guys, I suggest if you get the book and then make a copy of this, you might want to blow it up and then print it out. and then you've got a report format right there in your freaking pocket.
I do that in I keep a, when I go out, I have a black notebook that I call it my navigation and comms notebook. And I have laminated cheat sheets in there for both of those and the radio frequencies. So if I need to reference it, I can just slide it right out behind the Write in the Rain notebook, and boom, there it is. So if you're writing out a report, you're just filling in the blanks in your notebook is all. It like dummy-proof sense. Yeah,
exactly. And, you know, like you said about the field manuals, I think I've talked about this in a battle drill video, but you can get a hold of all this stuff. It's all public knowledge, but you know, if you get like the 7-8 or the new infantry 3-21.8, your infantry rifle and platoon, you can have that and read through it, and it's all good theory and good doctrine and stuff to know, but you got to actually go out there and do this stuff. And so, you know, you can't really stand out there in the field manual reading through a book. Like, this is kind of where the tradecraft and stewardship comes in the military and groups like yours. You know, you're actually taking dudes out there in the woods, and you're going off of doctrine that's been proven, and you're also going off of your experience. And so compared to the field manuals, you know, this thing just reads really well. So I'm not going to do a Jocko and read stuff, because I hate hearing him stumble through like 5th grade writing. But I just want to give an example. So he's got a chapter on choosing equipment. Packs, footwear, friggin' all kinds of stuff, sleeping bags. And then we've got a chapter on friggin' just water collection, purification, filtration. You know, so you're getting a wide array of skills and things you should know. Map reading, terrain association, all that. So let's go into your background. So I was, you know, there's a little bio in here, and guys, that's why I'm not going to read a bunch. You need to go get it. So what's your background in the woods?
So let's see. I grew up as a Boy Scout, obviously. My dad was an officer in the Army. So he was one of our scout leaders, and I was lucky to be a scout during that time period of the mid 80s through early 90s, really like the last of the golden years of scouting versus what it is today. But it was all of our scout leaders were all either still in the Army or they were old Vietnam vets. And what a great group of men to learn from out in the woods. You know, I mean, I remember we were that one scout troop who would play capture the flag, and we had Gen 1 night vision with us. I mean, that was just, you know, like, we never lost capture the flag, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So, you know, started off with that rough scouting background. And then the end of my senior year in high school, I went on a backpacking trip out west for 10 days. And it really it was almost like a church-like experience for me. It really set the direction of what I was gonna do for a career, and that was be in the outdoors. So it started off in an outdoor retail store that led to being invited to go on mountaineering trips, and after a few years of going just on my own or with other people, I started taking enough classes and courses where I was becoming an accredited guide, where I was able to start doing it on my own. And so I would take people to Washington, Oregon, Colorado, Utah, New York, New Hampshire, and go Pennsylvania and go do the thing. I mean, whether it was ice climbing or backcountry skiing or mountaineering or just you know, like Colorado is, you know, just straight up peak bagging trips. And it was
hunting.
I mean, I never did any hunting. No, that was never got into that part of it. And, you know, I look back and I'm like, man, I probably could have had some pretty cool opportunities, but unfortunately, the crowd that I rolled with, hunting just wasn't a thing.
Were they vegan?
No, nobody was hunters. That was all. Yeah, nobody was just hunters, you know?
Well, so, I mean,
Oh,
Guys, if you don't know guides, that's actually, there's like official titles, and there's some serious certifications belonging to that. I know you kind of
yes.
breeze through that, but you can just put up a website and go out there and take people out into the woods, but you get somebody hurt or killed, or you get lost, they're going to know pretty quickly that you're just,
Yep.
a dude. So
Right. Yeah,
that,
you got to, there's courses to take. There's, I mean, especially not just like the guiding accreditation courses with like the American Mountain Guiding Association or the International Mountain Guiding Association, but there's courses you can take through like Rainier Mountaineering and Timberline Mountain Guides out of, that specialize in like Mount Hood, or in Colorado, the San Juan Mountain Guides are a real big one. They're down there in like the Ouray, Telluride area. They all offer accreditation services for becoming certified to take people on trips. And on top of that, your medical training. I mean, to do, not just your basic first aid and wilderness first aid, but your wilderness first responder, your EMT courses, go through like Knowles or Solo. They offer those intense week-long wilderness first responder courses that are just an amazing tool to have in your tool bag of knowledge for taking people out to do these things. I remember I was probably 23 or 24, and I decided to take an EMT course strictly not because I wanted to be an EMT, but I took it for the medical training because I was taking people into the backcountry. Like I needed that knowledge to be able to go do that and to feel good about doing that in case somebody got hurt. That's on you. That's,
yeah.
you do need to take the courses to get that further knowledge. It's important. So I did all that for a long time, and started up my own guide service for a while. It was Backcountry Adventures Outdoor School. And all of a sudden the housing crash happened, and right there around 2008, and just that was it. Yeah, people weren't spending money to go on trips like that anymore. So got out of doing that. Did a little bit of consulting work for a couple of places, and once that ended, that was pretty much it. And I started, like my wife and I will joke about, like I started my my adult career then after that. I was like, that now it's time for a real job, I guess.
Yeah.
And so but I still, I never quit doing all of those things. And now I'm to the point where I'm glad that I can, over the last several years, I feel good about sharing what I know and my experiences to help other people out.
Yeah, that's cool. And, I found you through YouTube, like I think most people on here, and it really comes through in your videos. Like when you're sitting down doing your coffee talks and stuff, like at your bushcraft camp, you can definitely hear the experience and the passion and how you talk about this stuff. Yeah. So, and I noticed in the book you've got, by the way, guys, in this book, he's got his references back there in the back too. So that's pretty handy. If you want to go find like a bigger source of things he's talking about, that's always a good idea, because this is all like, snapshot, go get this thing done. So let's do some more Jocko time. We're going to get to some questions in a little bit too, because I know people are just burning. You can see the comments, right? Because I turn them off on my end.
Yeah, I can see them, yeah. No, I can see them.
I turn them off and ignore them, and you probably should ignore them too. Because I put it on, like, I put filters on there to keep out all the knuckleheads, but they end up finding their way in.
Right. I know. I see. It looks like Stretchman says on the Recon book, finished book 1, good series. I'm gonna let me grab something real quick. So like that, the reconnaissance manual, the CM2. This one, I do the property patrol thing on in the videos and stuff, and this has been what a wealth of information for a non-military guy to use. You pick one thing out of it and you just go work on it. And then the next time out, you add another thing to it, and then you work on that one as well. And before you know it, let's say you do this once a month, and same thing goes with with this manual. You pick one thing, and then you add to it and add to it, and before you know it, you're going out for a week, and then you're working on 6 different things, and it's all just you're becoming better and better and more efficient and more comfortable in all the skills that you're learning.
Yeah, that's going to be the next one I get. I don't plan on going in order. I'll get them all eventually, but that's the next one that caught my eye. I'm gonna have to start referencing these when I talk about this stuff in videos. That'll be cool. Give them a shout out too. But the methodology in here. So again, this is the ACE manual. So adverse conditions and environments. So what's kind of like the big takeaways from this? So I could read through the chapters, or you can just tell us what you think. Like, I noticed it's not just about adverse conditions, because I talked about right. there's like gear selection and stuff, but yep. I was looking back in the navigation, there's some kind of survival portions in the navigation, but what's kind of like if you were going to sell somebody like, hey, you need to pay attention to this part in the book, or your favorite chapter, you choose.
You know what, my favorite chapter, I have to say, is Mindset and Philosophy, that chapter 4, where I talk about failure, positive mental attitude, and embracing the suck. I think that was my favorite chapter to write, because those things resonate with me so much. The failure part of it is, and this plays into that mindset. We all fail more than we succeed in things, and you learn so much more through those failures than what you do through your successes. But we live in a day and age where people, number one, they're afraid to fail, and we don't let people fail anymore. People have to fail. They have to. Like, you have to have that sucky night out in the woods. You have to have that trip that is just an absolute disaster. And people, as a society, we don't let people experience failure anymore. And I think that takes away from what we are overall, what we're capable of doing in especially in survival situations. That's huge, I think. Positive mental attitude. That came from, I had taken a basic mountaineering course when I was 19 years old. The guide who was my instructor, his name is Alex Von Steen. He's a famous Mount Rainier climber, Everest summiter, written numerous climbing guides for the Cascades. He had this big thing in our class. It was all about positive mental attitude. Like, guys, this is 90% mental, this game. You 10% physical. You can gut it out physically, but mentally is what ruins people in the mountains. People second guess themselves. They don't have faith in themselves. They don't have faith in their teammates or in their abilities, and they back out. Like, you got to have that positive attitude that's just going to carry you through whatever difficult situation you may come upon. And that's extremely important in a survival situation. Whether you're stuck in a snowstorm or stuck on the wrong side of the river in the pouring rain and the river's rising, or heaven forbid you're caught in an avalanche or rock fall or whatever it may be. It can be any you name the survival situation, it applies. Your attitude is really going to dictate whether you get out of that situation or not.
Right. And if people don't realize this whole positive stuff, people hear that word and they think gay automatically, like, oh, right. Positive rainbows and unicorns and stuff. It's like, no, it's positive in the fact that, like, if you get lost, you don't sit down and call yourself an idiot and say you're going to die. It's positive in the fact that you sit down and actually take a breath. Like, that's usually step one. Just don't do anything, sit down, get some cover and take a breath, and then just start thinking through the skills. And that's the positive side of it, because then all of a sudden you start to get your confidence back. Whereas instead of just running circles, cussing yourself out, But yeah, it's not just rainbows and unicorns and stuff.
No, it isn't.
I like what you said about people aren't allowed to fail. And I got in trouble as a leader in the military all the time for not letting my guys fail. Like, sometimes you have to just get things done right. And you have to yell at guys and babysit them. You just, that's how bureaucratic organizations work. But if I could, we would do stuff wrong. We'd screw stuff up all the time. We'd say let guys hang themselves. We do that all the time, just so they could learn a lesson. And if it didn't affect the training or the rest of the unit, you know, it was usually a really good lesson. And my favorite was I would have younger dudes, if they were talking shit, you know, kind of like we get online. I'd be like, all right, you're team leader tomorrow. You're in charge for the whole day. You make all the decisions, you know,
Right.
and let them go through that process. And number one, they see how freaking crappy the job is and how most of the bullshit comes from way up there, not us on the lower level.
Right.
But they also get to make all these mistakes that maybe when they become a leader, they will have already made those.
Absolutely.
So they kind of get to fail in a coddled environment, you know. But
yes.
yeah, I think that's a big parenting issue in this country too. Like parents are helicoptering, and you know, kids don't get to burn themselves on the stove 20 times before they figure it out. It's
Right.
everything's like when my kids were little, dude. Nothing was baby proofed, man. If we would have left them alone, they would have died. And it was like because we just kept an eye on them, like parents should. But also, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
he hit his head. All right, yeah, good. He knows to friggin' not let go of the table while he's trying to learn how to walk. He knows he needs that
Right.
friggin', you know. So yeah, I get it. Well, that's cool, man. So, you know, I like when we get into the survival stuff, guys think about, you know, setting bonfires and bushcraft camps and all this. And so I like how you go through all this stuff. But, you know, we even get into like health and hygiene and stuff,
Yes.
waterborne diseases, you know, things that we're talking about this preparedness stuff. You know, and Stoker mentioned this the last time I had him on, like, it's not just going to be, you know, gunfire and all this stuff. And even in war, our biggest killers are disease and sickness and stuff. So, and it's all just, you know, handy little things in there just to go look in. And so, what's like what's your stance on all this preparedness stuff? Where do you think guys are kind of falling short in this realm?
I think people prioritize a lot of the wrong things. And I think it's just because people online they only talk about the cool stuff, not the bread and butter stuff. People don't talk about, although you're starting to see people talk more about medical, which is good. And you're starting to see people talk more about things like navigation, which is good. But people aren't really talking about like folks getting their household finances in order and, you know, and networking with, you know, with people locally, you know, whether it's with their neighbors or friends or family or whatever it is. People aren't putting priority on water collection and food storage. Simple things that I think either people take for granted or people just don't want to talk about it because nobody thinks they should be listening to those things because we still live way too comfortably in this country. So folks just don't talk about those things. It doesn't sell. And it's kind of hard to make money on that stuff because you can't shill those things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's a biggie, I think. And I think if people slowed down a little bit and really looked at those life basics that, you know, like being able to get your financial house in order, you know, maybe, you know, that's your refrigerator dies or your AC goes or, you know, something big, you know, most folks don't have the means to readily replace that. Or they don't have the skill set where they know how to fix those things. There's not very many people who, if one of those things goes wrong, they don't have the money put aside to go take care of it. They just don't. So I think that's a big one for people to really look deeper into from a preparedness standpoint. I really do.
Are you getting into the crypto stuff at all?
Not at all. No, I have a buddy who is, and he's done just amazing things with it, but it's not something that I don't know. I have a lot of questions on it. I just don't know. I don't know. I think about it like long term. I mean, what happens, when all it takes is somebody to turn that off. That's it. It's like you don't have anything. You really don't. It's not there. I mean, we have there's a place about an hour from us. It is a crypto farm. Okay, it's a crypto coin. It's a Bitcoin farm. So people think, they're like, well, how does that work? All they're doing is, it's a farm because they're building the servers that save the information. That's it. It's basically a giant storage facility with big air conditioners in it. But this is a big thing because all of this is on the internet. It's all has to be stored on a server somewhere. So they're building these giant server farms to store Bitcoin. They're not storing physical assets. It's just server space is all that it is. Like, so I don't know. I'm very, very weary of that. And more people are investing in it. What happens when that disappears? You got nothing. I mean, nothing. That's my opinion, at least.
Yeah. Yeah. So you guys, when you're doing your area studies, make sure you add in your local Bitcoin farm. So you either need to protect it or you go hit it, with some propane tanks and road flares and it's over. But yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I can understand the logic behind it. Because people are just trying to find another way off of what we got our physical currency that means nothing, and then our digital currency is just numbers. So I can understand people trying to get away from that, but, I usually push back and say, like, well, I have neighbors that haven't been on the internet in years, and they'll use money at the store, but when they deal with their neighbors, they're like, hey, you got a backhoe? And I need this work done. What can I do? They're like bartering labor stuff, like a community really does. They're not on the internet, because and that money only matters to them when they have to go to the store and participate. Kind of like the Amish,
Right.
They'll participate in our silliness when they have to, but other than that, they're on their own. The grid goes down.
Absolutely.
They're like, what happened? They don't care.
like COVID, like COVID. It's funny. Like, what's the joke? Like the Amish never got COVID because they don't have TVs.
Yeah. And if you share that on Instagram, it'll get taken down. I tried to share that multiple times and it got flagged and taken down. It's like, well, because I knew people that lived in the mountains and hey, what do you think? They're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, dude, we're all going to die. Did you not know that? And they're like, I'm fine. You're fine. What the fuck's the problem? I'm like,
right.
No TV. That's awesome, dude.
Yes.
Yeah. But, no, I get it. So, let's see. You guys start throwing in some questions, some relevant ones. Cause I know people start with the questions at the first minute of the video and then they get mad when I don't read them 30 minutes into it, but we'll start chopping some down.
Chit-chatting.
Yeah. All right. Well, what do you want to add? I'll start reading some of these, and you just. So I cut you off on your story. So.
Oh no, it's all right.
Yeah. So let's pick up from there. You kind of got shut down from the crash in 2008, and
yes.
So you had to get a real job. So where are you at?
So I started off with, I did a little bit of for a few years as a alcohol sales rep, and that was very interesting. And then I got into finance, so I have a little bit of a finance background, and the bad part is it was subprime finance, and it really opened. And actually, I'm thankful I had the experience because it opened my eyes to the depths of how people live, and not just, we think subprime finance and you think a certain segment of society, right? But it's not. Like, it's Ford workers, air traffic controllers, guys who make really good money and they don't have any. Like, it's all spent on boats and vacations and all of this stuff, but they're needing to borrow $5,000 at 25% interest. Like, that's not a good place to be, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a good place to be at all.
Sounds like your average private.
Right? 25% interest on a Ford Mustang, that kind of thing.
Yep.
So
That's a stereotype for a reason.
So I really felt like after a while I was really dying inside. Like, it was just not a good place to be. So out of the blue, and I really feel as though this was God speaking out. Out of the blue, a family friend whose family owns a business called me out of the blue and said, "Hey, what would you think about coming to work for my dad?" And they're a very conservative family, farmers, you know, the whole that whole lifestyle. And so I took a leap of faith and just went for it. And so it's I sell, design, and build fences. That's what I do, and I like it. It's very, I mean, there's stressful parts, but not really. I don't bring home stress, so that's a godsend.
Yeah, that's
so
important.
It's good. And it gives, and I tell you what it gives, I have the freedom to be able to go do the things that I like to do. You know, I mean, you know, taking my son, you know, out to, you know, going out to camp, that is just, you know, we still get to do that stuff. We still get to do family stuff. You know, right now the kids I have one graduating from high school right now. So it's, you know, to be able to just go to the calendar and mark off whatever you need time for. And it's nothing is questioned. You're not made to feel guilty about taking time off like so many businesses do to their employees. It's nice. It's a nice change of pace. And it, I mean, geez, it gave me the time to do this. It's been good. So yeah, it's, you know, life is good.
Yeah. So next year you got SEER Challenge in the calendar, right?
That's right. You better believe it.
Yeah. Yeah. I know you're tied up this year, but next year we'll just come capture you. We'll find you.
Like that, what was that TV show where it was the 5 or 6 guys, and they would go and literally kidnap the one guy and take him to some deserted mountaintop or deserted island and let him go, and he had to find his way out like within 3 days or something like that.
I don't know. That sounds awesome though.
No, the name of the show was, you'll have to look it up. It's called Dude, You're Screwed. That's what it's called. Dude, You're Screwed. It's like an
find that.
It's an ex-SAS guy, an ex-Green Beret, an ex-survival specialist, an ex-Navy SEAL, and they do this where they kidnap each other and blindfold them and put them on an airplane and drop them off with whatever they have in their pockets. Like, it's hilarious. It's funny. But there was like awesome. 3 seasons worth of it, I think. But that would totally be, yeah, you would get some ideas from it for sure.
Yeah. So when I put out the first season, people kept writing me and talking about all these shows, and I was like, dude, not a TV guy, I don't know, but that sounds pretty hilarious. You could do a drunk version of that and just make it awesome. Like, just because, you know, guys like us and like grunts, that's what we do. That shit in that movie with Will Ferrell where they kidnap people in the van, like, yeah, that's totally normal.
Oh, yeah.
Guys getting dropped off downtown naked and friggin' roofied, you know, like, so do that in a way. But, you know, I already got people complaining because I got unarmed people around bears and stuff. So they'd definitely be upset if we're roofing guys and leaving them out in the woods.
Right. Yeah, they would. Yeah, you'd catch flack for that.
Yeah. So I wanted to get to, let's see. Yeah, we got no awesome questions. Typical, so I'm gonna do it. But let's get to. Oh, I lost my pink things. Ain't helping me. So on the reports, so we got salute, sit rep, and you do have a combat service and support chapter.
Yes.
So that's kind of a updated term. So what got you into that chapter or that section?
So that intrigued me because people always talk about, gear and all these other things, but I wanted to talk about that because that is, if people have a homestead, to think about, or a central, let's say you have a multi-family homestead or something like that, which so many people are striving for right now today. Like, I thought that that was really an important thing of, number one, that's almost like a checklist of things that you should have stored, that you can kind of start your own logistics, your own logistics system or support network. It's always talked about where, heaven forbid, in a, whatever scenario, everyone talks about, oh, but, we don't have logistics. We don't have any sort of kind of a support network. You could very easily have it. If you follow those guidelines, you could easily put together your own logistics system. So, if you're really looking at a self-sustainment lifestyle, if you could centralize all that stuff, that would make life a lot easier for you down the road. So I always, people use that argument, but I think that we can have our own logistics support network in place. You just got to do it. It's not going to be easy, that's for sure, but it's all there. Like, the guidelines are all there for you to follow, to do. So why not start chipping away at those things? Or even in your home. I mean, geez, oh man, look at those things and think, geez, do you have fuel stored? Do you have extra fuel at home for your lawnmower and your yard stuff? That's part of that list. Building supplies. I mean, that's all part of that list. So when you start really dumbing it down and looking at it from a very basic point of view, you can just build upon it then, slowly but surely build out on that, and encourage your friends and family and neighbors to do the same thing. And then all of a sudden, before you know it, guess what? You've got logistics in place. Like, it's an amazing concept. You just have to do the hard work for it.
Yeah, and like you said before, it's not really a sexy thing. Like, I do see a lot of people talking about sustainment and stuff, kind of more for long term. And me and Stoker kind of went through this not too long ago, and I think we both generally have the same idea. Like, you want extra batteries and stuff for all this, but if you can live without power, that's even better. And then,
right.
If you kind of go through, like, I was actually looking at your checklist. So guys, he's got like a loadout, kind of like a prepared citizen loadout. He's got a ration kit suggestion. So, I mean, you can follow this like an instruction manual, put this out to your guys. Hey, this is the shit you got to have on you. And then actually go out there and use this to do your PCIs and check them, and then it goes into the combat service support. So that's kind of cool. You start at the individual level, and you've got your different levels of kit and everything, and then you get into the kind of more long-term stuff. That's what I like about it. Is it's got a really good flow to it.
Thanks.
So and it's all combined into one book. So like the Army crap. If you look up a CSS manual, dude, you're talking about 10 big old books that thick, and
oh geez,
nobody reads that stuff. So,
right.
What we do these days is we go PDF, Control F, and find the word we're looking for. But, guys, you should definitely have a printed book. And these little manuals, they're great to have around. And having stuff in print, that's one less thing you need power for. Now you don't have to worry about reading shit on your phone or your tablet. You got a freaking book.
Right.
So.
Yes, yeah, books are still a thing. And even if this book or any book like this, you read things and all of a sudden you come to a spot where maybe there's something that you don't quite understand, or there's something that you're like, oh, I've really been wanting to dive into that. So it lays the foundation, but then you can go start really like taking the deep dive and researching about this specific thing. I did this a few years ago when we started our bush camp. It was kind of like it was an opportunity to go back and revisit so many old skills that maybe just been out of practice on. And it created that environment to really start doing a deep dive on things like fire making or water filtering or shelter building or just in building, like structure building in the woods, to really dive deep into that and try to master as much as I could. And attacking that whole bushcraft part of it was huge. So, but once again, it all started with a small book or a picture, and I just started on like, ooh, I'm going to dive into that. Now I'm going to dive into that. And that was extremely helpful. That methodology was extremely helpful for me.
Yeah, cool. So here's a question for you. What has been the most challenging paradigm change between mountaineering and armed prepared citizen? Or what is the most different approach to the two concepts?
Ooh, that is a good question. I think where there's commonality is in the dedication to training. I think that's a big part of it. That to have that mindset of, okay, I know in order to do X, Y, Z, I have to do A, B, C. So I think those things overlap a lot. I think getting comfortable and in uncomfortable situations, those overlap a lot. Skills, learning the different skill sets, those overlap a lot. I think it's just different tools is all, in different strategies. So I think I was lucky that having that climbing and mountaineering background helped me a lot with making the transition. I think that's just from those perspectives, those things, I think that helped tremendously. That was important, I think. So that helped me out a lot. And the physical fitness part of it. So that's huge. That's, I know you talk about that a lot. That's, you have to, there's certain standards you have to attain or maintain in order to do those things safely. That's huge. I think that's probably the best way I can answer that question.
Yeah, that brings up a good there's kind of some tension there. I'm sure I come off this way when I talk about stuff, but being a grunt doesn't automatically mean we're going to know what the hell we're doing in this world, especially in the combat services and port. Like the modern grunt, you deploy him. If he doesn't get his Burger King and green beans downrange, he's unhappy. We can suck, but I learned most of the best training. So what I'm thinking about is what you were talking about earlier with guides and stuff. So you threw out a lot of terms that me as a young grunt would hear these terms and be like, oh, that's like military stuff. But then, it's just because that's the only place we've heard it. So there's kind of been this stigma of like, everybody gets this stuff from the military world. But I learned later on, as I started doing more training and working with different types of people, the military actually steals a lot more stuff from the regular people world than vice versa. So like when I went to sniper school, we had E6 and E7 Army sniper instructors, but they pretty much just ran the classes, controlled safety, and set up training. Our best instructors were like crusty old grumpy civilian redneck shooters who could shoot anything, and they knew it all. Those were our best instructors. The survival guy that did the survival course for us wasn't a military guy. He was like a dude, but we pick up a lot of stuff, especially in this GWAT era, running up those hills in Afghanistan. You learn a lot of stuff from the scouts, backpacking world, any kind of rappelling, mountaineering stuff we do. That is mostly from the civilian, not derogatory, but just the regular people world. So I just wanted to point that out, we kind of all get our experience in one realm, and we think that qualifies us for something else. So I think it's cool how you approach the overlap. There's going to be overlap in there, But I think it's the most fun to work with just the average Joe, and you can just learn a ton of stuff, you know, especially just outdoor stuff. You know, there's a lot of survival skills the military has gone away from, and that's horrible. So, you know, the long-winded way of saying that, guys, like whether you're, you know, experienced in one realm, you're going to find somebody to learn something from either way,
Absolutely.
especially if you're coming from the military world. Like, there's a lot of things we do very well, but most of that knowledge comes from these regular dudes, and we just, you know, I like the scouts. I mean, shit, dude, you know, they learn their stuff from like guys from the 1800s pioneering, you know, and then they just put it into teachable formats. And then the military's
Right.
like, how do we teach guys basic stuff? Oh, well, this group did this, you know, 50 years ago already. So,
Right.
yeah,
Like the info is there.
yeah, right. So you don't need to go out there recreating shit, but yeah, you know, and especially with shooting, man. Even as an active duty grunt, I was not happy with how little we shot. Being stationed overseas didn't help because we didn't just get to go out every weekend and blast stuff off. But I mean, shit, you know, later on in life, I realized most of my redneck buddies, they shoot way more than guys in the military do. So
Yeah.
that's another thing to think about. So I saw another question up here. You can add to that if you want. Have you run into any military guys that you just wanted to punch in the face because they, besides me, that because they act like they know everything?
You know what? I have not. Um, I don't. Most that I've met and interacted with, and you know, gone out in the woods with, have been very down to earth, open to sharing information, and um, I have not had a negative interaction, which I think I'm probably lucky. I don't want to say if I'm lucky that I haven't, but my my interaction has been positive. But I think, you know, I approach it a little bit differently because I was an army kid growing up, so I kind of understood that world a bit. So it was when talking to people, I have a little bit of an easier time of just navigating the conversation. So because I do come from a bit of understanding from being surrounded by it for a long time. So
Yeah.
I think that helped me with just the familiarity with it. That I so yeah, I haven't had a difficult time with that. No.
All right. Well, that's good to hear. Maybe I just pay too observant because we can it's like a gaydar. We can hear
Right.
some military talk, and I can tell within a couple minutes if the guy's full of shit or not. And it's painful when you hear guys saying certain things, and it's like, dude. But you know,
I
and
could
if it's in a training environment, they get to step all over their own dicks and look like an idiot, so it kind of works out.
right because it reveals itself after a little
Oh yeah,
while in the field where you kind of know after a while who's who's truly done what they're saying they've done. It all shows itself after it just takes time to show itself. That's for sure.
yeah, and you can also pick up. You know, it's also good for us. It's good to be humbled because most of the stuff we're talking about they're perishable skills. You can't be like that's why I will reference certain parts of my time like from my sniper days, but I rarely lean on that, especially if I'm talking about guns because I haven't been a sniper in 20 years. So and I haven't practiced it. I would be an idiot to start talking about long range shooting when you know it's just like land nav and first aid, you know, especially first
You,
aid. You better be practicing that shit under stressful environments, or you're gonna kill somebody when you're stressed
those
out
are
trying to treat somebody.
those are big ones. Navigation is a big one. I started practicing it again a few years ago, and I didn't realize how rusty I had gotten. Even things like grid coordinates. like I was totally getting back into it. I was reversing numbers. So instead of it being up in this grid, I was reporting a number down in this grid. And it was all because I was just swapping the last two numbers and everything because I was rusty with it. I'd been out of practice for a long time. Even things like, knowing my pace count, I couldn't remember. I had to go back out and remeasure it and the whole deal, measuring it on side slopes, up hills, down hills, thickly wooded areas to try to just get back into that, get back into knowing what I had forgotten after all these years. Like that's a big one. Knots is another perishable skill, knot tying. People still practice that old, if you don't know how to tie a knot, tie a lot kind of philosophy where, they, knots are another really important. And you said medical, that's another, and things so much has changed in 20 plus years of wilderness medicine that like it's so many different things are taught. I mean, back in the day, it was like tourniquets were taboo, and now everything starts off, anything to do with bleeding, it seems like it starts off with a tourniquet. And also like philosophies have changed in medicine where, 20, 30 years ago, it was all about jumping right in and getting at it. And now today there's so much, number one, there's the things, everybody is so happy today. So everybody's like, oh, you gotta make sure it's this situation and you gotta watch out for this. And heaven forbid you move this, or, so now there's all these different variables involved with it that even CPR is taught different today than what it was 20, 30 years ago.
The Army combat lifesaver, at least, they cut a lot of that stuff out.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but it was gone, and then I heard it was coming back, but thankfully most states have that Good Samaritan law that protects you.
Right.
So
yeah,
some states even have a law that if you see something, it's your duty to get involved.
Yes. It's like a duty to act something or another, that if you see something, like you have as a citizen, you kind of have like, it's expected of you to do something that at least in good faith, try to do something, heaven forbid, and I think all that came from everybody is so quick to pull out their cell phone to try to videotape something instead of helping. Like, go help. Any kind of help is better than, even if it's stopping traffic, go help somehow.
Yeah. Or just, I've heard some stories from, firefighters on car crash scenes, like, just talking to people, that helps, like we train that in the grunt world too, like reassuring the dude, the guy's arms blowing off and guys are looking for it. He's getting worked on and somebody's got to be sitting there smoking, and giving him water or giving him a cigarette, because he's going to be flipping out about it and be like, dude, you're going to be all right, man.
Right.
You don't tell him you can't find his arm, but you're like, we're going to find your arm. The guy sets it on his chest, like, dude, don't put it on his chest,
Don't hand it to him. Come on, don't do that.
So I got a question on navigation. How were you raised in navigating with a map and protractor and stuff? So our MGRS system, it's totally dummy proof. Do you guys actually come up in the scouts or in your mountaineering world using a protractor for lat and long? Or
yes,
really?
In fact, it's especially on like glacier travel with known landmarks. Like Mount Rainier is a great example. There's a lot of known rocky landmarks that stick out amongst a lot of the glaciers, and so much of your navigation is done between those points that you are completely taking bearings and reverse bearings. And I mean, it's because if you get caught in a whiteout, like you're on bearings, and you better have all that information written down, ready to go, so that you can get out. Like it's huge. I had a quick story on that. It was on Mount Rainier. We were descending from Camp Muir back down to the base of the mountain, and it was complete whiteout. Like you could barely see your boots, as you're taking steps down the glacier. but it was all compass bearing. It was all bearings all the way down, hitting each of those landmarks, knowing how many steps it was, approximately it was. And to be able to come out of that whiteout and boom, your foot hits the parking lot at the lodge. Like that was a great feeling to know that, hey, it actually works. Like to have that, like your skill set has to be really dialed in those situations, and to be able to use all those tools for coming down. Because if all you knew how to do was just orient a map to north in that situation, probably not getting out of it. It's you're sheltering in place, waiting for the storm to finish. But to be able to know how to do all that helps tremendously, and that was as a 19-year-old kid doing that. So that's, I mean, it was definitely, they still, at least they used to teach that type of navigation. I don't think they do anymore, but they used to teach it. But in the mountaineering world, like that's still a big deal.
Okay, that's cool. See, I never learned the conversion over, so I just, anywhere I'm at, I just go to USGS website and I print out a topo MGRS map. Because I still got my protractor, the Garmin, I got it set to MGRS. Yep. So it's because I'm a dummy and that's what I know. But so you actually have a protractor that, like I've seen the regular maps, I have seen grids for lat and long. Mm-hmm. So you can actually get down to your minutes and seconds onto the map.
I used to be able to do that. I can't anymore. My skills have, I'm not up to where I used to be with that. But yeah, I used to have the old school protractor, I think is the one that you're talking about, right?
Yeah, well, we have that little square one, and you got your three that match the friggin', basically zoom on the map. So you just line that up, and that's where you can get your 6, 8, 10 digit grids. But
you line it up on the corner and just count out your numbers. Yeah,
right and up. So like we can pull, if we got a decent map, you can pull off a 10 digit grid, which gets you within to a meter on the ground. So you can do that with lat and longitude?
So you can on some of those mountaineering maps, because I want to say, what were the scale of it? It was a much more defined scale. So it was, I want to make sure I say this right. It's probably like a 1 in 5,000 scale, 1 in 10,000 scale. So really,
okay.
Yeah, I mean, you're really getting detail there. Yeah. So you were able to do that with those. That's how you were able to get such a finite number on them. Well, that helped a lot.
Okay, that makes sense, because when I pulled like lat and long off of Google Earth and stuff, there's a lot more decimals there. So it looks like
yes, there are. Right.
Yeah, because we got the 10 digit grid, and most of us are using 8 digits, or if you're calling up just reference points, you're given a 6 digit grid, and that's like within 100 meters. So
right, because you don't
good enough to find a hilltop.
Exactly, enough to find a hilltop or a like where a creek's letting out into a river system, or where a valley is ending out into something. Yeah, that's a large enough area that you don't have to worry about. You don't need to be within 3 meters of something, But if it's a rock outcropping that is only 5 meters by 10 meters, you need to be a lot more exact to be able to find that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, next time I pass through on a road trip, I'm gonna have to find you and get you to give me a hands-on that, because that's pretty interesting.
I have a buddy who is he's a former Army guy, and he's a little bit of a navigation nerd. He's really good with it, and he's great at teaching it too. Like he will scale it down to what you do know and just build it out from there. And I think this helps with navigation, is whoever's teaching you has to have a lot of patience. That helps tremendously.
Well, and it's definitely one of those, we say train the trainer. Like if you can teach something, then you probably understand it good enough. And so
right,
to take that further, if you want to get better at something, you should teach it. So like we would always make a junior guy teach our map reading and land nav courses and then somebody would be sitting back there to help out. But just to make the guy actually go through it. And it's like I deal with that with my kids, you know, like anytime I'm going through stuff with them, it's like, well, shit, I don't know what I'm talking about. I got to brush back up on this, and then I can explain it to
Yes.
them, and then it's like, okay, yeah, so yeah,
I
land
found
nav
myself
is
doing that a
it's a
lot.
beast.
It is. I found myself taking that approach, like when my kids had started off in scouting. Um, it was funny, like taking that, like changing the way you were trying to teach something. It made you better at it. Even at that level, it helped tremendously with your own knowledge of whatever the subject was. I remember teaching wilderness survival to the boys on one weekend campouts, and like it literally grew from this group of 6, 10, 11, 12-year-old boys to all of a sudden all the dads were standing around listening, and then people from other scout troops were starting to stand around and listen, because it was just like all of a sudden, people, it was like this huge knowledge dump going on, and people were just like, they weren't getting that information anywhere else, and all of a sudden here it was, and everybody just ate it up. It was awesome. I thoroughly enjoyed that.
Yeah, that's good stuff, and that's kind of what's cool about any of this fieldcraft stuff. You could just go out in the woods with a couple guys and say we're gonna go backpacking, and then if you've got anybody who's a nerd at this shit at all, it's gonna turn into a full on op order, and then you're gonna be throwing in some tactical movement. You're instead of camping, it's gonna be a OP. And,
Yep.
it starts thunderstorming. It's like, all right, well, we're not leaving. We're not, it's lightning.
No.
Who gives a fuck? We'll hide. We'll wait it out. Like we're going
Right.
to see if you got the right dudes around, and then you sit out there and nerd it out, and you go through some stuff and you realize like, dude, I forgot how to pack for an OP, like, I'm going to freeze my ass off, and you just start learning all these lessons. So that brings up a question. This guy is asking, what's the hairiest situation you've been in mountain guiding?
In guiding.
$100 he wants to hear about Bigfoot.
I don't have any like super hairy. I've been in spots where like accidents happened higher up, like, but I wasn't involved in them. Where like rescues were taking place at the same time, but once again wasn't involved with them, but was in the vicinity at the time. I won't say, so I really haven't had a hairy situation, but what I did one time, and this was on just a personal trip with a group of guys. We used to do this trip out to Colorado every year, where we'd go out to climb 14,000 foot peaks every year at the week of Labor Day, like for 10 days every year. And one of the guys took a bad fall. We were out in the San Juans outside of Telluride. And if anyone's familiar with the 14ers in Colorado, this was El Diante was the name of the peak. And we were about 13,500 feet, and he reached up to grab this crack that was on a big boulder to help pull himself up. And the whole boulder just slid right out of the mountain face and went. Like it was right next to a snowfield, probably about be that much of an angle, so steep enough.
Damn.
And this rock ended up being it was about the size of a Volkswagen Bug that slid out from him as he pulled on it to pull himself up. And this rock just took off tumbling down. Like we watched it tumble down 2,000 feet into the valley. And he was on his butt sliding down the snowfield. And I mean, nothing we could do about it. We thought he was gone. And all of a sudden, he hit the bottom of the snowfield and just stopped. Like for no reason, just stopped. He ended up with this bruise that was like from his knee all the way up his butt, up into his lower back. And, he thought he had bit it. Like he even said like the only thing running through his head while he was sliding down that snowfield was just that he's dead. That's it. Like we're going to have to call in a helicopter and have his body flown out, the whole deal. That was probably the hairiest to be directly involved, like right there. So I went down to get him, and got him the rest of the way down the mountain. Like spent the entire day getting him out and seeing to the few injuries that he had. Thankfully, he was way more medical knowledge than I had. He's actually it was a flight nurse, so he had tons of medical background. But I remember to end it on a funny note. We were sitting around the campfire that night drinking scotch, and he goes, guys, he goes, if my wife asks why I have these bruises, please tell her I got drunk and fell off the bar stool. He's like, because otherwise she'll never let me come again with you guys.
Yeah.
So that was a close one. That was hairy. Like, because we all thought we were like, oh, like Jim's gone. But it all turned out okay, thank goodness.
So were you guys just traversing a steep area, and you're not hooked into each other at all?
Exactly. Like it was what they would classify as like a class 3 climb, which is fairly steep. You have to use your hands. You have to look for footholds, but the risk of a fall is like really, really low. You could rope up in certain areas, but we're all fairly accomplished climbers where, we're just, you're quicker. Sometimes you're quicker and safer not being roped up to each other. And that was a situation where we felt we would be faster and safer without it. Which is funny because the prior day we were on Mount Wilson, which is part of this whole group of mountains. It's like a big bowl, and you have 4 peaks that are connected by ridge lines. And we had ropes and used them on Mount Wilson, but not on this peak El Diante. And that, hindsight is 50-50. You look back on it and you're like, well, yeah, we could have placed anchors and been roped up, but we felt as though that wasn't the case. And, our risk management, we thought, we're like, chances are so slim, we're not going to worry about it. Yeah, well, that's what happens,
Coleman Outdoors, the guy I always talk about, the backpacker.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you know what he's gonna say? You should have had your trekking poles. Would have right. Saved you.
I will tell you, like, the trekking poles were all down in base camp because we knew we were going to be using our hands, so nobody worried about bringing their trekking poles with them up on the climb. But it is what it is, That's a lesson learned.
Yeah, so earlier you were talking about kind of starting early with a 10-day backpacking trip. That was in your early days. What year was that?
1995.
Oh, okay. So
it would have been.
I'm just curious. That wasn't super old days, but what was your?
Give me a second. I'm gonna hold on a moment, okay? Give me 1 moment.
I want to hear about his gear loadout for a 10-day backpacking trip. Even in the 90s, that's probably going to be interesting. We've made leaps and bounds since then. All right, questions. I usually keep them hidden. Freedom by me. What's up, man?
I'm back.
Yeah, so I just want to hear what a 10-day backpacking loadout looks like for the 90s. I think we'll have fun with that one.
So everybody, and I wish folks understood this better, and a lot of it could be because folks don't have the experience with it. So like backpacking in those days, there still really wasn't ultralight gear. Nobody even thought ultralight. It was just, this is what you need to carry, so you carry it. Plain and simple. If your pack was 50 pounds, it was 50 pounds. If it was 60, it was 60. It is what it is, right? But that would have been like, you would have had a 2-man backpacking tent because you have a buddy, so you would have been load sharing. So you're carrying your share of the tent, you're carrying your sleeping bag, you're carrying your sleeping pad. Your self-inflating thermarest pads were a thing then. So we all used the old Green Army roll-up foam pads. It was a mix of those. You had all the freeze-dried food was all backpackers' pantry. in the big like meal kits. It was, and you carried bigger pots and pans, Coleman or Peak One light gas stoves. You would have carried a dining fly or some sort of a dining tarp, so that like that in if it was raining or storming, like the group would hang out under this tarp in the back country. You'd have your personal clothes. I mean, back in those days, you'd pack 3-4 pairs of drawers, 3 to 4 pairs of socks, 2 pairs of pants, a pair of shorts, a couple shirts, a flannel shirt.
It was all cotton.
Most of it would have been cotton, yeah, or at least like a cotton blend, like a cotton polyester blend, maybe. Like, we all would have, a bunch of us had like, our dad's Army BDU pants. So maybe you might have had a warm weather pants that would have been a blend, but no, everything would have been cotton. You were carrying tons of water, obviously, with remember the old, the big Pure water filters. Like you would have had one of those big ones every, one filter for every 4 people. And then you also had pre-staged food drops. So you knew on your map, okay, so this 10-day trip is covering 100 some miles. You knew that, okay, on day 4 we have to be at this location because that's where our food's going to be for resupply. And then 3 days later, there's our next food resupply. So you were navigating between these points, knowing, okay, we know we gotta, like guys, we got a short day today means a 20-mile day tomorrow. So, you were trying to lay it out where, all right, it's so many miles this day, so many miles this day, so many miles this day.
Who would drop the food off for you?
The Park Service. You arrange it with them to drop it off. So they'll prearrange where they'll drop things off. Like, some of the backcountry rangers will, drop it off so close to a road crossing or something. It costs money to have those things arranged, but they'll do that. So I want to say my pack, I'm going back out of memory here, was probably in the 55 to 60 pound range. I'd say that would have been a normal load. But that wasn't, that was just for 3 to 4 days if you include food. And obviously your pack was lighter by the time you got to your resupply drop because you were out of food by that point. So the weight you'd have those variables of weight, like, water's a variable weight, food's a variable weight. So you'd have that. But that's what a backpacking load would have looked like that long ago. That's, rain gear would have been your typical coated nylon, non-breathable, waterproof jacket and pants. But I remember some of the guys wearing, having garbage bags for rain jackets, just cutting a hole for the head and the arms, and they'd have their hefty bag raincoat, and it worked, and that's the great thing is it worked. So to be able to have all this new stuff today and people spending all this money on gear, guys were getting it done in garbage bag raincoats. It is what it is,
Yeah, big old heavy Alice rucks or those funny framed old backpacking rucks and freaking blue jeans and white tube socks and.
You look back on it and like everybody was wearing blue jeans. Like you backpacked in blue jeans. That's what that and cotton flannel shirts. I don't know. We all lived, it's amazing what you can do with just the most basic of things. But that's where like it really having that experience back then, it makes you look at things differently today. When people are talking about certain kinds of gear, you're like, we did all that with this, and we were better for it.
Yeah. Well, and there was a lot of creativity required. These days, you can replace creativity and skill with just buying shit, which is kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier. you can buy all this stuff and you're still going to go out there and have some issues. So it's good, because you can't replace skill or experience with,
Right.
Toys. But yeah, that's kind of a problem with all this gear stuff. And it's like, I'm part of the problem because I talk about gear all the time. It's what got the channel where it was. But I still try to remind people. That's why I kind of troll people now lately in videos, because I'm like, yeah, I'm wearing blue jeans. It's raining and I'm walking around in blue jeans. We did it for 200 years and I'm alive. But just to kind of pick on the people that are like, well, it's got to be the technical pants that quick drying and all that. And it's like, I play with all that new stuff. Hell yeah. But, my choice for pants, if I'm out there doing yard chores and shit, it's blue jeans, man. I'm not going to destroy them. I'm not going to set myself on fire. And if I'm going to go ruck 15 miles that day and it's 100 degrees, I'm probably going to put on some, not shorts, but probably some more, relevant hiking pants. But,
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. If you have the choice, and in your head you're like, oh, I'm only gonna go do this or this, you just go with what you got and rock it. But if you're like purposely, like you said, you're gonna go on a 15-mile ruck, like when I did that Norwegian foot march a couple months ago, there's no way in the world I would have grabbed a pair of jeans to wear for that. Or white cotton socks. Never in 100 years. But that's thankfully, but we have choices, so that's. But yeah, I'm with you with the jeans. I'm still good with rolling in jeans out at camp. I'm still good with wearing jeans out there.
Well, when I first started rucking again years ago, just to do it for fun, I actually enjoy it. I started off in blue jeans just because I didn't want to be the guy walking around with my BDU or DCU pants. And if practically that makes more sense because it's a poly cotton blend, so you're going to get some more breathability. It's still not that great, but it's better than just pure freaking denim. But I was like, I don't want to look like Rambo, so yeah, I was freaking humping out there. And the best was when it was just pouring down rain and those things were soaked and just like holding 10 pounds of water. I'm like, this fucking sucks, man. But it's kind of part of the toughening up process. And I was still rocking. In the Army, we had to wear those horrible green cotton poly socks, the newer version they gave us. But when we deployed, we switched to just white cotton, just Hanes white cotton. Yeah. And I love talking about that because people were like, how are you still alive? And it's like, well, you're like anything else, your feet adapt. Things adapt. So a brand new guy.
Not too long ago.
Yeah, a brand new dude starting off. We want to get you starting off with the stuff you can afford now. That's good for what you're doing. But if you got freaking, your uncle's old black leather boots and white socks, you still got something. So you just toughen the fuck up. You're going to be okay. But it's kind of. I think that's why I get along with I hate everybody my age and below unless they've done the same stuff. But the older generations just were always tougher.
I agree, 100%, absolutely.
Yeah. So, is there anything I missed covering your book? I think we kind of jumped around a whole bunch, but you could just think about if you find something. But I just wanted to remind guys. So this is the Citizen Manual 9: Adverse Conditions and Environments, and the main group is Professional Citizen Project. So there's a whole series of books. I'll have a link to their main website down there in the description. And once again, this kind of reads like an instruction manual. So like you could take this out there with you and go through stuff. So I'm looking at fire right now, fire and survival. Mm-hmm. So if you don't know what tinder and kindling is, I confuse those all the time. It's right there in pretty pictures for you, and it explains it. And you've got like your thumb size stuff and on up. And so you can actually, if you have no clue what you're doing, you can take this book out there and just kind of practice stuff. And like Jay said earlier, you could split it up into tasks. You go out there with your buddies or by yourself and just be like, today we're going to do water collection, purification and stuff. We'll work on that, And so, yeah, you can collective training or individual stuff.
Absolutely. And I really, part of during the process of writing it, I wanted it to read like an old, what was it? The old Boy Scout field book. That was, I remember that having a big impact on me in my younger years, like that field book, not the handbook where that goes over all the awards and badges, but the field book that was all, in the military, it'd be like, it was all field craft like that. I love field craft, and I wanted it to really, like, I wanted folks to get a taste of just field craft and being able to take those things and to want to go practice them. Like that was that. I hope people pick up on that in it, that it really is, it's almost like reintroducing field craft to the masses, because it's been forgotten for so long now that, people have retitled it bushcraft or whatever, but it's just those basic things that, people talk about, like going out for training opportunities or getting together with the guys. And I mean, you hit it on the head. Like, this is the thing where you're like, all right, guys, we're going out next weekend and it's going to be all about fire. It's going to be all about shelters or all about water. And before you know it, a year from now, you're doing full field exercises where you're like, hey, we're going from here to here to here. This is the scenario, and we're going to play it out. But throughout this, we have to accomplish all these fieldcraft tasks. Like, this is just straight up living in the field. We've been practicing it all year long. Now we're going to throw it all together in one big exercise. Like, go do it. That's the only way you're going to get better. And now you're immersing yourself in that experience, and you're getting to do it with your boys. Like, to do it with your buddies makes it 10 times better, in fact.
Yeah, and it's so much better than just sitting on the couch watching other men play sports and wasting life. Guys, if you've got a group of dudes who that's what they want to do, like, I strongly suggest you say, guys, fuck this poker meeting this weekend. Let's go out and do the woods. Like, yes. What do you want to do? Like, who gives a fuck? Get your shit together and let's go do some stuff. And if they're not down, I strongly suggest you find another group of dudes. I hate to tell people how to live, but it's like, what is that? And a lot of people get it when they do reconnect with the wilderness. You go out there, and all of a sudden they're for whatever reason, they're not looking in their phone anymore, and they're looking up, and they're like, dude, there's fucking stars out here. This is cool. Mm-hmm. And people get it when they get out there and do it. So yeah, maybe give your drunk buddies a chance. Say you're going to go grab a case of beer with them and then just get lost and go off road and say, well, we got to figure this shit out now. Like, poke a couple holes in your tires so nobody can get you going, and throw your spare off into a gulch and be like, well, guys, we're sleeping out here. What are we going to do? Maybe give them a chance. And if they're still being, special, then there's nothing like screwing around in the woods. It's
absolutely. And to be able to and you can make it like, it doesn't have to be a super hardcore whatever. Like, you can do one or two things for a few hours and then cook an awesome meal over the fire, have some drinks, tell some stories, and all of a sudden they're texting you a month later and they're like, hey, Jay, when are we going to go out and do that again? That was fun. And what are we going to do this time? What are we going to work on? Like, people dig that. They really do. Like, you get them hooked and they're like, oh man, that was cool. Hey, you slept in a hammock that time. I bought a hammock, and then I want to go sleep in it the next time we go out. Like, it's a total gateway into more. And now you're having that group of dudes who all of a sudden, like that bond is tightening now. And before you know it, everybody asks about, like, oh, how do you put groups together? How do you meet people and all that? And that's the old fashioned way of doing it, and you're going to find out quick in your bigger circle of friends. You're going to see, like, at the end of the day, like, you're going to have that 3 or 4 that become those dudes, that are just, and that's okay. Like, hey, there's my circle right there. And I know I'm glad that I have that circle, and that I get to go do that kind of stuff with. It's super cool, for sure. So I hope people, take all that away from this, and I hope it encourages people to just go do, even if it's your own backyard or the local park or whatever it is. Take your kids with you, take your spouse with you, go do it. I mean, there's no, in this day and age, there's absolutely no excuse to not just go do it.
Yep, I agree. So I got one more question for you.
Yeah.
What's a skill or group of skills, whatever? What's something that you're working on that you either think you need to get better at, or you haven't touched at all? What kind of stuff are you trying to get a hold of?
I am trying to do better at observation and note taking. That is like my next level of things to get better at, to slow myself down and really kind of immerse myself in that. That's where that's kind of the trajectory I'm on with those skills, is trying to get better at that. I would say and then combine that with comms. That would be, radio, get better at radio usage. I think they go hand in hand. So I think that's where my focus is probably on a bit more right now. And, over the next several months or a year, I'd say.
Have you picked up NC Scout's book yet? The Guerrilla.
I have not. I haven't bought it, but I downloaded the PDF for it. There's a free download for it that I found that I happened to be researching something else and I found it. I'm like, oh, bloop, download, and I ended up printing it up. So I have not read it yet, but I printed it up and it's sitting right over on my bookshelf over there, and I to go through, because I would like to dive more into that.
Yeah, I've got it on the way. It's been on my affiliate store on Amazon for a while because I just kept hearing so much good about it. But I got it on the way, and I've heard it's very, very good for us dummies. So I'm looking forward to seeing that, because I've talked about it before. It's like I've worked with radios. I've been an RTO, but that doesn't mean shit in the civilian world. And I can turn a radio on, I can do basic programming, and I can talk to people, but there's so many things I see on these channels where they're like, let me explain this for beginners. And after 30 minutes, I'm like, dude, I'm more fucking confused than when we started. Like, because they're just throwing out all this terminology. It's like they say we're bad in the military with our jargon and shit. It's like, what? But anyway, I hear that is a very good read. So I just wanted to throw it out there if anybody else is thinking about the comm stuff, because that's a big deal. You got to be able to talk. However you can, if it's some Balfangs, whatever, but
hey, it's a tool, and you just learn how to use it and maximize the benefits of it. And if it leads you into something else, hey, great. If the furthest you take it is just talking to the guys while you're at camp, hey, that's okay too. But learn to maximize what your use is going to be out of it. And most importantly, everybody says, what a great tool for just listening. We out at camp, we'll throw up a J-pole antenna up in the tree and just scan. And it's amazing the conversations you hear on the airwaves. And you'll sit back and just laugh around the campfire listening to it, because you're like, holy cow. And then you start paying attention to what people are saying, and they're given landmarks and streets and all this stuff. And all of a sudden, you start being able to put together where people are at that you're actively listening to. It's kind of funny, actually. It's a good skill.
Yeah, my local ham club, they do a net call every Tuesday, and I'll join in and listen. They actually do an open net toward the end, and they're like, hey, if you're just listening, you don't have a call sign, we don't care, come in. But it's cool to listen to them chatter, and you get to hear about a lot of things I wouldn't say over the radio, but it's cool to hear that many people join in. It's like, dude, this absolutely. Is, we thought radio was dying. Like, there'll be 40 call signs in there on a Tuesday night, Right. That's good stuff.
Kind of cool. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah. All right. So we covered, I think we covered a lot. You got a last, I'm going to cut you off on positivity and mindset. because I think we got that. So what's some last bit of advice you want to leave people with?
Oh man, I would say, like, I think it's more important now than ever to figure out I'm going to go back to, like, figure out who your guys are going to be, who your close circle of friends is going to be, and really foster those relationships moving forward. And folks that you can rely on, that can rely on you, is huge. So I think that folks focus on that a bit, and then just that self-reliance. Like, think about all these things that we do all the time that you can just do yourself, and start learning those things. Start picking a new skill once a month. Like, write it on your calendar. This month is this, go do it. This month is this, go do it. You'd be surprised at the resources in your area, whether it's the local, like, I know our local Metro Parks is doing a big thing on navigation right now. Like, that's awesome. I mean, it's free. Go do some of their things. They did a thing 2 months ago. They did this thing that's funny because they called it their Bigfoot night hikes, but it was all like it was all navigation at nighttime.
Nice.
Like, that was cool. Like, what a great segue into having fun with it while learning an important skill, you know? Like, that's cool. Like, okay, let's get a whole bunch of people out for a Bigfoot night hike, but we're going to talk nighttime navigation. Like, what a great entry into that. That's so I think that those things, like, now's the time to really learn these things, you know, and design things around them, and get yourself better, and introduce people to it. Like, bring them into the fold, invite them out to go camping with you, invite them to go on that hike with you. I know you see them on Instagram every now and then. They're like, when I tell my buddy we're going to take an 18-mile hike and we're 5 miles into it, and it shows the buddy, like, just like, what in the world did I get myself into? Just keep inviting people to come out with you.
Yeah. All right. I like it, man. Well,
yeah,
I appreciate you coming on. It's good talking to you live finally.
Yeah, absolutely. We've chatted back and forth in the past, and it was great finally be on, and I appreciate you wanting to talk about the book, and I appreciate that you went out of your way to read it. Even that's a good one.
It's a good read,
so,
man.
Yeah, thank you, appreciate it. So
there's a couple things in there, you know, where I'm like, yep, forgot about that. It's good to get a reminder. So everybody, you can hold yours up, but guys, make sure you go check it out. It is on Amazon, by the way, and I've seen it on Amazon DE and .com or .uk. So it is, you can get it overseas.
Yeah, there's been I've seen, like, I look for posts, especially on Instagram, where guys are posting, you know, that they got a book, you know, that they ordered from Amazon, and it's guys from Canada, Great Britain, Germany, Spain, Mexico, Poland. And I saw one pop up from Poland. Like, that's super. Just from me personally, it's super cool that people around the world are buying it and reading it and excited about it. Like, that's, who knew, you know? I mean, who knew? So it's cool. It's been a cool project to be a part of, and there's I mean, they got much more in the works, so there's going to be more stuff coming out from all the different authors that partake in this project, so it's exciting.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you have any plans to do more with them, like another manual, or?
I would definitely love to, if the opportunity presented itself. 100% would love to. Absolutely.
All right, cool. Well, everybody, make sure you go check it out. It's definitely some good stuff, and very easy to digest and take with you and get started. And there's some stuff, you know, if you think you know it all, I guarantee you there's some stuff in there you're gonna have an aha moment. So appreciate you for coming on, Jake.
Thanks, Randall. I appreciate you having me on, and I'm sure we'll do this again sometime.
Oh yeah, we'll definitely do it. I'm gonna try to bring some more of our knucklehead friends on, and we'll get some panels going on. All right,
Very
guys.
cool.
Appreciate y'all tuning
All right.
in, and thanks to Jay for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Randall.